If you've ever stayed alone in a hotel, you've probably heard sounds you couldn't explain, footsteps in an empty hallway, an elevator opening on the wrong floor, a door closing somewhere in the distance. Most people tell themselves it's nothing, another guest, an old building settling, their imagination. But sometimes, the strangest thing isn't the sound, it's the door you don't remember seeing before. Tonight's story is a fictional psychological horror tale inspired by liminal spaces, impossible places, and the unsettling feeling that some hotels were never meant to let their guests leave. This is Tales of the Dark. Rain hammered against Ethan Brooks' windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up. He leaned forward, squinting through the darkness as lightning briefly illuminated the winding mountain road ahead. He hated driving at night, especially in storms, especially on unfamiliar roads. Ethan was 31 years old and worked as a freelance photographer, traveling across the country photographing forgotten towns, abandoned buildings, and isolated landscapes for magazines and documentary projects. Most nights he enjoyed the solitude. Tonight, something felt wrong. His GPS had lost signal nearly 40 minutes earlier. His phone displayed no service. The storm only grew worse. Then, through the curtain of rain, he spotted a faded neon sign, Pinecrest in asterisk. Half the letters no longer worked. The building stood alone beside the highway, 3 stories tall, old stone walls. Warm yellow lights glowed behind rain-covered windows. It looked abandoned, except one window on the ground floor remained brightly lit. Ethan pulled into the parking lot. Only 4 cars sat outside, all covered in a layer of dust, as though they hadn't moved in weeks. He grabbed his backpack, jogged through the rain. The automatic doors didn't open. He pushed them manually. A small brass bell rang somewhere behind the reception desk. The lobby smelled of old wood, coffee, and something faintly damp, like a basement that had never completely dried. An elderly man slowly appeared from a back office. Perfectly combed grey hair, dark green suit, polished shoes. His name tag simply read, Mr. Hale. He smiled. Long drive. Ethan returned the smile. You could say that, Mr. Hale slid an old-fashioned registration card across the counter. No computers. We prefer the old way. Ethan filled out his name, address, phone number. When he finished, Mr. Hale reached beneath the desk and placed an old brass key onto the counter, not a plastic key card. A real key attached to a heavy wooden tag. 307 3rd floor, Mr. Hale said. The elevator still works. Ethan picked up the key. Still, the old man smiled. Most nights. Ethan chuckled. Mr. Hale didn't, as Ethan turned toward the elevator. The receptionist quietly spoke again. His tone had changed. One thing, Ethan looked back. If you hear footsteps after. He glanced toward the old grandfather clock in the lobby. 2:17 in the morning. Stay inside your room. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Maintenance. Mr. Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly said, whatever you hear, don't open your door. Silence filled the lobby. Then the old man smiled again. As I said, enjoy your stay. The elevator groaned as it climbed. 1st floor, 2nd, 3rd. The doors opened onto a narrow hallway, soft yellow lights, dark red carpet, vintage wallpaper. Everything looked frozen in time. His room, 307, sat near the very end. The room itself was surprisingly clean. Large bed, wooden desk, old television, small balcony overlooking the rain-soaked mountains. Nothing unusual. Ethan unpacked his camera equipment, charged his batteries, ordered takeout from the only restaurant still delivering in the area. By midnight, the storm had finally begun calming. He edited photographs on his laptop until his eyes grew heavy. Then he fell asleep. A sharp knock woke him. His phone screen glowed. 2:17 a.m. 3 knocks, slow, evenly spaced. Knock, knock, knock. He sat upright. Silence. Then footsteps. Someone walking down the hallway, very slowly. Not running, not hurried, just walking. Ethan remembered the receptionist's warning. He almost laughed. Old buildings. He climbed out of bed anyway, walked quietly toward the door. The footsteps stopped. His hand rested on the doorknob. For several seconds, nothing happened. Curiosity won. He unlocked the door. The hallway was empty, completely silent, no guests, no staff, nothing. He stepped outside. The air felt strangely cold, far colder than inside his room. He looked toward the elevator, nothing, toward the stairwell, nothing. Then, his eyes drifted farther down the hallway. His breathing stopped. Another door stood there, dark wooden finish, brass handle exactly like his own. The number read, *307. Ethan blinked, then looked back at his own room. 307. He looked again. The second door remained, 10 feet farther down the hallway. Impossible. He slowly walked toward it. Every instinct told him to turn back. Instead, he stopped directly in front of the second room. 307. His own room remained visible behind him. Both doors carried identical brass numbers. Both looked equally old, equally real. His fingers trembled as he reached toward the handle. Before he could touch it, a voice whispered behind him, "Don't." Ethan spun around. The hallway was empty. The whisper had sounded close, almost beside his ear. His heart pounded. He hurried back inside his room. Locked the door, checked the peephole. The second room, 307, still stood at the end of the hallway. He didn't sleep again. At sunrise, he opened his door. The hallway looked perfectly normal. Only one room, 307, remained. The second door, had vanished. Ethan hurried downstairs. Mr. Hale stood behind the reception desk polishing an old brass bell. Ethan placed his room key on the counter. "I need to ask you something." Mr. Hale smiled politely. The hallway, Ethan frowned. There were 2 room 307s last night. The old man's polishing cloth stopped moving. Only for a moment, then he smiled again. "I'm afraid that's impossible. I saw it. There has only ever been 1 room 307. You think I imagined it?" Mr. Hale leaned slightly closer. "What time was it?" Ethan hesitated. 2:17. For the first time, the receptionist's smile disappeared. "You opened your door. It wasn't a question." Ethan said nothing. Mr. Hale sighed quietly. "I asked you not to." Before Ethan could respond, another guest entered the lobby. A middle-aged businessman carrying a suitcase. Mr. Hale greeted him warmly. "Welcome to Pine Crest Inn." The man signed the register. Mr. Hale handed him a brass key. Ethan glanced at the wooden tag, room 312. The businessman smiled. "Looks cozy." Mr. Hale nodded. "It usually is." The guest disappeared into the elevator. Ethan watched the doors close, then looked back at Mr. Hale. "What happens at 2:17? The old man stared silently for several seconds. Finally, he answered, "Some questions are safer left unanswered." Ethan returned to his room frustrated. He tried convincing himself the storm, the exhaustion, the unfamiliar hotel had all combined to create a simple hallucination. Then, he began reviewing the photographs he'd taken the previous afternoon. Mountain landscapes, roads, gas stations, rain. Everything looked normal until the final photograph. It had been taken inside the hotel lobby shortly after he arrived. He hadn't even remembered taking it. The image showed the reception desk, Mr. Hale, the grandfather clock, and, standing beside the elevator, was a tall figure in an old hotel uniform, its face completely blurred. Ethan frowned. He zoomed in. The figure's name badge remained perfectly clear. It read, "Room 307. His phone suddenly vibrated. Unknown number, no caller ID. He answered. Silence. Then a man's voice whispered, barely above a breath, "You opened the wrong door." The call disconnected at that exact moment. The old grandfather clock in the lobby downstairs began striking. 1, 2, 3. Ethan looked at his watch. It was only 11:43 in the morning, yet from somewhere beyond his hotel room door, he heard slow, heavy footsteps. The footsteps stopped directly outside Ethan's door. He held his breath. The hallway fell completely silent. Slowly, he moved toward the peephole. Nothing. The corridor was empty, not a single guest. Not even the housekeeping cart that had been parked there earlier. Only the soft yellow light stretching toward the elevator. Ethan opened the door. The hallway looked exactly as it had the day before. Normal. He almost laughed at himself, until he noticed something lying on the carpet. an old brass room key attached to a wooden tag, *307. His stomach tightened. He still had his own room 307 key in his pocket. Slowly, he reached down, picked it up. Now he was holding 2 identical keys, both worn, both scratched, both marked. 307. He hurried downstairs. The lobby was empty, the reception desk empty, the brass bell sat alone. Mr. Hale was nowhere to be seen. Ethan rang the bell once, nothing, twice. Still nothing. Then, without warning, the grandfather clock chimed. 1, 2, 3. Its hands moved rapidly on their own, stopping at exactly 2:17 a.m. The lobby lights flickered. The temperature dropped instantly. Then everything returned to normal. The clock now showed 11:58 a.m. Mr. Hale calmly walked out of the office carrying 2 coffee cups as though nothing had happened. "You look tired." Ethan placed both keys on the counter. "I have 2 room 307 keys, Mr. Hale looked down. His face remained expressionless. "You shouldn't have picked up the second one." "What does that mean?" The old man quietly pushed one key back toward Ethan. "The hotel doesn't choose by accident." Ethan frowned. "What hotel?" Mr. Hale looked directly into his eyes. "The one you're standing in isn't always the same one." Before Ethan could ask another question, Mr. Hale walked away. The conversation was over that afternoon. Ethan decided he wasn't staying another night. He packed everything, loaded his camera equipment, walked toward the parking lot. His car wouldn't start. The engine cranked, then died again. A mechanic from the nearby town arrived 2 hours later. After checking everything, he looked confused. "Nothing's wrong with it." "What? It should be running." He tried again. Nothing. The mechanic shrugged. "Leave it overnight. I'll come back tomorrow." Tomorrow, another night. Exactly what Ethan didn't want. He reluctantly checked back into room 307. Mr. Hale handed him the same brass key as Ethan turned toward the elevator. The receptionist quietly spoke. "Tonight, if another door appears, don't go inside." Ethan didn't answer. Deep down, he already knew he wouldn't listen. Night came quickly. The hotel became unnaturally quiet. No televisions, no conversations. No footsteps. At exactly 2:17 a.m., 3 slow knocks echoed through the hallway. Knock, knock, knock. Then the footsteps, heavy, measured, walking toward his room. Ethan opened the peephole cover. A man in an old hotel bellhop uniform slowly walked past, head lowered, dragging one hand across the wallpaper. His face remained hidden beneath an old cap. The bellhop stopped directly beside Ethan's door without turning around. He quietly whispered, "Wrong guest," then continued walking. The hallway lights flickered when they stabilized. The second room 307 had returned. Only this time, its door stood slightly open. Warm yellow light spilled into the hallway. Ethan remembered the warning, "Don't go inside." He grabbed his camera, stepped into the hallway. The second room 307 looked exactly like the first, except the wallpaper inside was older, darker, covered with water stains. He slowly pushed the door open. The room was an exact copy of his own, the same bed, the same dresser, the same bathroom, even the same photograph hanging above the desk. But someone had been living there for years. Empty food cans, bottles of water, old blankets, dozens of notebooks, every wall covered with messages. "Don't follow the footsteps, *, the hallway remembers, *, never answer the phone, don't look through the second peephole." Then Ethan noticed the photographs, hundreds of them, pinned across one wall. Every single photograph showed him driving through the mountains, checking into the hotel, walking the hallway, sleeping. Some photographs had been taken only hours earlier. Others had dates weeks into the future. One photograph froze him. It showed Ethan standing beside a grave, his own name carved into the headstone. A voice suddenly echoed behind him, "I burned those." Ethan spun around. An elderly man stood in the doorway, thin, exhausted. His beard reached nearly to his chest. He wore faded hotel pajamas. His eyes looked hollow. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan slowly lowered the camera. "Who are you?" The old man smiled sadly. "I asked that same question 32 years ago. You work here." The man quietly shook his head. I checked into room 307. In 1994, Ethan stared at him. That's impossible. I thought so too. The old man slowly walked toward the wall of photographs. I opened the second door, just like you. I thought I could leave, but every road led back here. He pointed toward the window. I've escaped hundreds of times. I've driven thousands of miles. I've flown across the country. I've even changed my name. His voice broke, but every hotel always gives me, room 307. Silence filled the room. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Number, the old man nodded. It never lets us go. Before Ethan could speak, the room suddenly shook. Every light went out. The hallway outside echoed with heavy footsteps. Not one pair, many, walking slowly toward the room. The old man's face turned pale. Closed the door. Ethan slammed it shut. The footsteps stopped outside. Then, someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Neither of them moved. Another voice whispered from the hallway. Soft, calm, Ethan. The old man covered his ears. Don't answer. It learns your voice. The whisper continued, now sounding exactly like Mr. Hale. Ethan, checkout is at 11. Then, his mother's voice. Ethan. Then, his own voice. Ethan. The doorknob slowly began turning. The old man grabbed Ethan's arm. Run. They sprinted toward the bathroom, but when Ethan opened the bathroom door, it no longer led to a bathroom, only another hotel hallway. Endless, lined with identical doors, every single one, marked, *307, thousands of them, stretching farther than he could see. Every door slowly began opening. Inside each room, someone stood watching, different people, different ages, different decades, some crying, some screaming, some simply staring, each one still held a brass room 307 key. Ethan stumbled backward. The hallway vanished. He found himself lying on the carpet inside his own hotel room. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains. Everything looked normal. His suitcase sat beside the door. His phone displayed full signal. The storm had passed. Outside, his car started immediately. Mr. Hale smiled politely as Ethan checked out. Safe travels. Ethan didn't reply. He drove for hours without stopping. By sunset, he had crossed 2 states. He laughed to himself. Maybe it had all been stress, exhaustion, a nightmare. 3 weeks later, he accepted another photography assignment, a luxury hotel in another city, different state, different owner, different name. The young receptionist smiled warmly. Welcome, she typed for a moment, then reached beneath the counter. She placed a brass key on the desk, not a key card, a brass key attached to a wooden tag. 307. Ethan stared at it. I requested any room, except 307. The receptionist stopped smiling. Her eyes slowly met his very quietly. She said, you never request it. You only think you do. The lobby lights flickered. Somewhere above, an old grandfather clock struck. 2:17. The security camera above the front desk suddenly filled with static when the image returned. There were now 2 reception desks. Ethan slowly turned toward the hallway at the far end. He saw them, 2 identical doors, both marked 307. Neither hotel has any record that Ethan Brooks ever checked out. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, and if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.